Sunday edition of Hints and Tips and Tricks and Shop Hacks from Comstock Metal Shaping, the world headquarters thereof. Anyway, I'm going to go a little bit more from dolly, some different types, shapes, and styles. I'm going to do a little bit of slapper work. You can never have too many dollies. A lot of people have the need to say you must have a really, really good dolly. None of these are hardened, except for this one, which it's inadvertent. But they're just cast iron, cast steel, and you don't beat at them too much. Some of these are cheaper, like these three here, maybe from your favorite import store. This one's a post dolly. You could put this in a vise. If the hole's big enough in your anvil, you can actually set it in there. I make a stand just for this guy. Gives you different shapes to work from. This is a bow tie. This is a comma dolly. I wonder why. Don't worry about the name so much. Universal dolly, one of my favorite ones from Snap-on. They've got a number of different radiuses to work with on different panels. The thing about a dolly is that you want to have enough mass to work with, as big as possible basically, because when you're working on something, you want to be able to have that dolly hold the panel. You don't want to have the panel moving or ringing. We also, again, this is a tooth of an excavator bucket. I cleaned it up and polished it. I've used this a few times. Used it for an edge here. You can use different edges in different places. This one's never been cleaned up. It's in the list to get cleaned up and polished someday. They don't need to be polished. Some of these are just freshly sandblasted, and that's good enough. Any marks you transfer into a panel from a little bit of that, if you're going to prime it and paint it, it's not a big deal. It's so small. If you're going to polish something like a brass radiator shell, like I've seen some people do, then you're going to want to have some really, really fine equipment. Getting to some slappers, the evolution of some of these. This is called a dinging spoon. You can actually use it as it is to kind of disperse the load. You can use it back here for a little bit more heavy of a hit, disperse the load out here. This one here is another type of spoon, a little bit heavier, again, from our favorite import store. It's got a little bit more mass to it. You can move a little bit more, do some neat things with that. This is something that has been developed over the years. Dad and I used to make these a lot. It's just called a long slapper. It gives it a little bit leverage compared to the original one. And use this in the same context. You don't do this as a dinging spoon like we used to do. Instead, we use it with this handle, and being further away gives you more leverage. And again, this area here can give you a little bit more aggressiveness. Out here, it can be a little bit more fine. So what I've got here is I've got just a piece of flat metal, a couple dings in it. I don't expect to get all these dings out because they are stretched. Anytime you take a flat piece of metal and done it, it is stretched. That's just physics. We can't get away from that. So I'm going to initially take this ding out. Now you hear that ringing sound? That means it's starting to hit the anvil. We got to be careful because too much of that will make it stretch. So I can do a little bit of off dolly work, and it's still just a little bit left. Now see, the hammer couldn't quite do as much, so I'm going to take the slapper, and it's almost like ironing, but not quite. Now it took that, and there's a little bit of oil can left, which means it's still stretched. We can work at it from both sides. I do a wiping action for two reasons. It allows you to see where you're hitting, and it gets you into a rhythm. It doesn't push the metal to one side or anything like that. It allows me to continuously, if I'm sitting here going straight up and down, I can't see the mark. So as I wipe away, I'm able to see any of the scratches that my slapper made inadvertently. There's also file slappers that will make marks and will actually file a little bit of material off. If I went straight into it with this guy, I may get a little bit more aggressive and hit it in the heel of the slapper. Which may make it stretch just a little bit more. One more. The nice thing about working with something flat, I know, Hannah, is that it's measurable. You can measure flat. You can't really measure a curve like on a car because it's ever changing and ever flowing. Thus, the problem with working something flat, it can be measured because you can sight along it and see a straight line. So with automotive work, we like to have work on curves, but flat stuff tends to be a real pain. All right, so probably next week or the next video, I will work on some torch shrinking, which will take care of this last little bit of oil canning, even on something flat. Cool? Thank you very much. Enjoy. How many people have been practice your gas welding. All right, thanks. Questions, comments, like us on Facebook, Comstock Metal Shaping. We don't have a website yet, but we're working on that. Cool? Questions, comments, feel free to ask. Thank you very much.